Good evening. I'll now call the Standing Committee meeting of January 8th, 2024 to order. We welcome a number of people into the boardroom for our public meetings, and in accordance with our policies and procedures and the Code of Conduct for public participation in meetings, we expect a safe and respectful environment for all participants. That includes staff, board members, and guests. Everyone is expected to be respectful and not interrupt the meeting proceedings. In the interest of maintaining that, should there be any conflict between members of the audience or any meeting disruptions, people in attendance may be directed to leave the premises. And next is the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school boards and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, there are no declarations of interest at this time. And now I'm going to move to the agenda, and I do have a request to amend the agenda to add an item to number 8. The item is regarding Creekwood New School build, and I'm going to add that to as item 8B, unless, does anybody have an issue with that? No, seeing none, then I would look for a motion to have the amended agenda moved and seconded. Trustee Brown and Trustee Morton. Thanks. All right, and going to number 8A is the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation charity of choice, and that's Trustee Donna Edwards. Oh, sorry, I skipped, I moved, sorry. Number 5 is the DDSB presentation. It's the effective literacy instruction, Superintendents Erin Elmhurst and Andrea McCauley.
Thank you. Good evening, and through you, Chair. I'm delighted to present an overview of the significant advancements in literacy instruction within the Durham District School Board over the past 5 years, leading into the implementation of the updated language and English curricula. Collaborating with the DDSB Central Literacy Team, I have witnessed the positive outcomes evidence-based shifts in practice have had in developing literate learners. In today's presentation, members of the Central Literacy Team, Lanya Lewis, System Lead, Maggie Sawzy, Speech and Language Pathologist, Leanne Hussey, Literacy Facilitator, and Jason Himsel, Grade 7 to 9 English and Language Facilitator, will share the district's endeavors and shed light on the student experience resulting from those dedicated actions and shifts in educator practice. This evening, we anticipated some members of the Central Literacy Team joining us as well in the audience, but they were unable to make it, so I now pass it over to the team.
Good evening. Learning to read is not a privilege, but a fundamental and essential human right. This is the foundation of the work that we are doing at the DDSB. Literacy is essential for student success. It is the cornerstone for individual empowerment, education, and participation in society. We are committed to ensuring that all students learn to read. We are working collectively to build student language skills so that they can comprehend ideas and information, interact socially, inquire into ideas of interest and study, and express themselves clearly. Through responsive teacher-student relationships, students are immersed in rich literacy experiences that nurture enjoyment for learning.
Teaching reading is not the role of one person. Learning to read and write is a complex process and requires knowledge of the brain combined with strong instructional practice. Early in 2019, educators and DDSB central staff began to revisit and reinforce the importance of oral language and phonological awareness in partnership with culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy when teaching students to read. The impact of this work led to the initiation of the Literacy Inquiry Project, which brought together the skills of a speech-language pathologist and literacy coach. This unique partnership focused on increasing educator knowledge and know-how through professional development and in-class collaborations. Students experienced measured growth in foundational literacy skills and increased confidence in reading abilities as a result.
While engaged in this work, the Right to Read Inquiry Report, the Ministry of Education's Effective Early Reading Instruction Guide, and the updated language and English curricula were all released. The work being undertaken by the DDSB was in direct alignment with these guiding documents. Moving into the 2023 school year, the continued evolution of the Literacy Inquiry Project informed the creation of collaborative interdepartmental teams as well as system-wide professional learning. These teams, which include facilitators, literacy coaches, speech-language pathologists, ECE facilitators, K-6 support teachers, and de-streaming coaches, support educators in implementing new resources and provide ongoing professional learning opportunities centered on evidence-based systematic instruction using anti-oppressive approaches. These collaborative teams also continue to support junior and intermediate educators in delivering responsive, evidence-based literacy instruction. The impact of this work is being felt by students. They are learning to read, they are proud of themselves, and they are developing a love for reading.
The process of teaching literacy skills is not the responsibility of any one person. Educators, through authentic learning experiences and assessments, tailor responsive learning opportunities for student success. School teams work together to offer personalized programming involving support staff and co-planning and co-teaching, and in doing so, enhance educators' ability to support every student. We acknowledge the pivotal role of families as the primary and most influential educators in every child's life. The active involvement of families and the broader community is crucial in shaping and fostering the development of literacy skills.
We are pleased to share a short video showcasing how this work is shaping the way students are learning to read and write. Enjoy the positive impact that this work has had on educators, families, and students.
Language instruction involves engaging students' multiple sensory modalities.
The resources have been super helpful, and the activities get students engaged and involved. Looking forward to the team coming in again.
In every subject, students select and use a variety of literacy strategies.
Because if we ever see a word that we're not sure how to pronounce, we can kind of do these kind of steps to see how to pronounce it, and we can learn new words.
Because our mind is like a web of things, we usually learn how to distinguish meaning by hearing a word, not by seeing a word. So basically, from being able to pronounce this, you can connect the word to its meaning easier.
I feel like this team is the missing link in education, bringing educators and supports like speech and language together to achieve the same goal, student success.
First one.
O, it would be open.
Good. So you write a little open on top. Just write open so everybody knows. So is that vowel short or long?
It's long.
Good. Do you remember?
After working with the literacy team, I have grown in my confidence in implementing a consistent phonics routine. I also have a better understanding of progress monitoring.
So as an educator, I've noticed that I now have the vocabulary to help teach my students about breaking down words into syllables. And I've started to notice them applying it in other situations where they need to spell a new word. And their sentences are definitely more complex now, so that allows them to get more complex ideas on the page.
It has been so great to see my daughter excited about reading and actually applying the strategies she's been learning at home. Being an FI student, reading in English is something she struggled with in the past. But we've seen a real improvement this year, and I really think the special reading teachers had a lot to do with that.
The Ontario Language Curriculum is designed to support students in developing the language and literacy knowledge and skills they need to succeed in education and in life, and to encourage students to experience the joy and possibility that literacy learning can ignite.
We are proud of the ongoing collaborative work taking place across the district. The foundational reading and writing skills students are developing will help them become reflective, critical, and independent learners and achieve academic and programming goals. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this evening. We're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Do trustees have any questions or comments? Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you so much for the presentation, and it was great to see what we were calling the evidence of impact, the gains that you've made over a short period of time. So it's totally beneficial for all of our kids, especially our early learners. So I just have one question. It's just a question that I'm curious about, just basically for clarification purposes. It mentions about an anti-oppressive approach to ensure inclusivity and equity in education. And I was just wondering if you could explain to me what an anti-oppressive approach would be in terms of literacy.
Thank you so much for the question, and through you, Chair. Previously, a lot of the language we've been using when we are supporting classrooms that really reflect all of our students and the identity of all of our students has been culturally relevant responsive pedagogy, so maybe a term that we've been comfortable hearing. We also have evolved those practices to include anti-oppressive practices to ensure that all students have access to learning opportunities to meet them where they are. So this can also include ensuring they see their own identities reflected in the materials that they're reading and the materials that they're accessing, but also ensuring that we are providing opportunities for students to enter learning at their own readiness level. And so really it's that extension of the work that we've been doing, ensuring that the work in anti-oppression and teaching and learning is brought together to ensure all students can be successful.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the presentation, and also thank you to the tech support for getting the video going. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the director's update, and I'll turn it over to Director Camille Williams-Taylor.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Good evening and welcome to our first meeting of 2024. I hope everyone in our community found an opportunity over the past few weeks to re-energize for what I hope will be a great rest of the school year. Last month, before the winter break, the Ministry of Education announced curriculum updates that will be implemented in September of 2024. New and updated course curriculum includes de-streamed grade 9 geography, grade 9 and 10 business studies, grade 9 and 10 technological education, and grade 10 career studies courses. More information to assist schools, students, and families with the 24-25 course selection process and implementation planning will be shared as it becomes available from the Ministry of Education in the coming months. This evening, staff will share the final draft of the content for the new Ignite Learning multi-year strategic plan. The proposed new multi-year strategic plan is a culmination of more than a year of work. Trustees charted a course for this work in partnership with our staff, and the community. The extensive consultation process engaged and collaborated with many individuals and groups connected to the DDSB, and what we learned has informed this proposed path for the next 5 years. Kindergarten registration for the 24-25 school year officially begins tomorrow, January 9th. Kindergarten at the DDSB is a child-centered, play-based educational program that provides children with a stronger start in school and in life. Families can register their little ones online by visiting the DDSB website. Thank you, and that concludes my updates for this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from trustees to Director? Seeing none. I'll move on to number 8, recommended actions. And the first one is the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation Charity of Choice, which is Trustee Edwards.
I'm not sure if people can hear me properly. So it is presented as is, unless there's no questions. Otherwise, I'd ask, you need to ask me questions and not staff questions. You defer this to the next meeting because I can't speak on it. But it is there as presented. The rationale is there on page 7.
So I don't know about everybody else, but I really struggled to understand that. So Trustee Edwards, the document is at page 7 of the package, and I think you read the motion. But I can't say that for sure. But there is a motion in the package, and I think I'll read this just so that it's clear for everybody. So the motion is that the DDSB Board of Trustees recognize Ignite Durham Learning Foundation as the charity of choice for DDSB, The DDSB will promote the IDLF as the charity of choice to staff, students, and its community members wherever possible. I don't know if Trustee Edwards moved it, so I'd appreciate someone moving that. Did she move it? You understood that? Okay. And you, Trustee Martin, you'll second that? Okay. Any questions, comments? Anybody like to speak to the motion? Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think IDLF does some really amazing work in the community, but as they are not a part of the DDSB, it's possible that their mission and goals could change down the line, and it would be difficult for us to walk anything back. So for that reason, I'm nervous about creating an allyship with any organization that we wouldn't be able to influence in a way to make sure that they're always aligned with our mission and goals. So for that reason, it would make me nervous to select a single charity rather than leaving it open.
So I've put myself on the list. I'm going to speak in favor of this. There is nothing in this that prevents the DDSB from contributing to other charities. I think that, you know, in considering what Trustee Cunningham has said, I don't think any outside organization we're going to be able to influence, but certainly we can always decide whether or not we want to continue to have a relationship with the charity if their values do happen to change. And I think that, I mean, IDLF is a new charity that received their status in 2021 and has been doing a lot of work to build that charity and has done a lot of work for DDSB students and their families. I personally, having participated in some of the activities just over the holidays and the number of families that they were able to help, they were able to provide 75 DDSB families and 232 students with Christmas. They all received groceries and gifts and warm clothing and those types of things. So I don't think there's any guarantee with any charity, but I think that's something that the board would have to consider at any point in the future if an organization's values and principles don't align with the board. Trustee Morton?
Everything that you have said is absolutely true. It has taken a number of years for this Ignite Learning to be up and strong, and they do an amazing job in supporting our students and our families. I definitely will be supporting this.
Trustee Arsenault?
I as well will be supporting this. Being at the facility over the holidays and actually seeing the families and seeing the work they do and seeing their depot, and they're also eager to want to help every single family or as many families as they can. I would hate for something to stop them from doing the work that they're doing now. And so I am for this motion.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think it's already just been said. I wholeheartedly, this is something very near and dear, and the work that goes into this charity is amazing. And until you see it for yourself, you probably will never understand, but I wholeheartedly champion this motion.
Any further comments, debate? Seeing none, I'm just going to ask you to use your check marks and your X's if you could. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I can't. And next on, so that passed, that was Next is item B, which is the Creekwood New School build, and I'll turn that over to Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As we know, there is the upcoming Creekwood School. We are looking at moving the location from the Creekwood into Ajax. Because the Ministry of the Environment has not yet fully signed off on the Creekwood location and on the tight timeline that we have in order to make sure that we get new schools in place, the recommendation has been to move the school to Ajax. But a lot of parents still have questions, and they've been reaching out to Trustee Linton and I. So we would like to jointly put forward a motion, and we move that the Board of Trustees ask staff to develop a public memo about the Creekwood School relocation to answer the following questions. So first, what concerns did the Ministry of the Environment raise on the most recent report? 2, why can't we wait for the next set of results before committing to the relocation? 3, how will this reduce crowding at neighborhood schools? And 4, the projected timelines.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Trustee Thatcher? Any questions?
Chair, I have a question.
Trustee Ben Cameron?
Thank you, Chair. I personally didn't hear about this, and I'm just wondering when that decision was made.
Associate Director Wright, do you know?
I believe the trustees were communicated the decision on December 20th via email, and the decision was made shortly before then.
Trustee Linton?
Thank you, and for you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes. We've been hearing from residents in the community who have been expecting this bill to come along. So, notice an email that went out did catch a lot of these residents by surprise. One of the main things, and student trustee Ben Cameron has somewhat alluded to this, is the communication. So I wholeheartedly support this motion put forward by Trustee Cunningham as a way of communicating, and hope that that sets us on a path of communicating the next steps, and when there are, decisions made, the rest of the way. So ultimately, I support this motion. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, and do you have that motion, Jillian? Yeah. Okay. Would we like it to be read again, or could you read that for us? It's on the screen, so. Okay. Is this correct, Trustee Cunningham? Yeah. Okay. Again, with your cards. All those in favor? Opposed? Moving on to number 9, information items, and it's the student trustee report, and we do now have Ben Cameron online, so trustees Cameron, Hoare, and Kasoju.
Thank you, Chair. I believe it's just going to be me speaking today. So, on behalf of myself and my fellow student trustees, Happy New Year. It is great to be back at the board table. In December, the Senate tackled pivotal topics including OSSLT timing, the multi-year strategic plan, as well as access to high school opportunities. As secondary school students prepare for exams and wrap up semester 1 this month, We emphasize mental well-being and encourage students to reach out to school staff for support. We are enthusiastic about the opportunities that 2024 holds. That concludes our update for this month, and we would love to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions from other trustees? Seeing none, we'll move on to item B, which is the Ignite Learning Multi-Year Strategic Plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Williams-Taylor.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'll just wait for the first slide to go up because it will set the context for the rest of the presentation. So again, through you, Chair, and with thanks, we are bringing forward today the culmination of a journey of work that was certainly a path that was crafted by the Board of Trustees starting back at the beginning of 2023. We have joining us today our consultation team from Maximum City, and we know that our executive lead, Rob Surjanic, will be also taking us through this journey. But I did want to set a context for everyone to understand where we are in the work, and so we do have a color-coded representation on the screen that does speak to some of the key steps bringing us to this point. You'll see that it is indeed color-coded, and you will see that we do have in the first 6 blocks, starting with the selection of a consultation team, the establishment of a trustee working group, the working group, the trustee working group established the priorities, and these priorities informed the consultation plan. There was more than one discussion with trustees around the nature of the consultation because trustees made it very clear to the staff that a robust consultation was required, and in fact there were a couple of times that we needed to go back to the drawing board to get it right. And so with the consultation, the feedback was collated, brought together, and the feedback went back to the working group to establish the strategic directions and goals. The last conversation with that trustee working group happened just before we went off on break, so that trustees in the working group had the opportunity to see if we indeed got it right. And so what is being presented to you today is in fact the strategic directions as well as the goals that were the culmination of that part of the journey. You will notice that the color changes after that, going into the yellow piece, which takes us into the work that the staff needs to undertake to take the strategic directions and goals and turn them into a plan for implementation. So that's moving into the design and branding, and we know that the design and branding of the previous strategic plan was quite effective in that even in this room we see evidence of that, but you see evidence of much of that in your reports, in the visual representations of most of the things that we do throughout the district over the time of the strategic plan, and that's why the design and branding is an important milestone. The strategic work plan is where the implementation comes. So after it is you have given us the go-ahead with the goals that are a part of the direction, we need to go back and look at how it is we create a work plan to operationalize the undertaking to get to those goals. One of the other questions is how is it that we'll identify the measure of the progress, because a part of our work is reporting back to trustees, and we also need to ensure that we engage the entire system, trustees, the Board of Trustees, the staff, as well as our school communities. So communication, solid communication plan is also a part of our responsibility. You will see that we have a yellow and blue golden blue piece at the bottom, and that's the joint work between the board and the staff around the launch and the implementation. And so once it is we get to that point, that milestone, we will need to work together to do the launch as well as start the implementation, and then again the reporting to the board and the community of the progress on the plan will then continue for the 5 years of the plan until we get right back again to the top. So where we are now, if I were magical, I would press a button and we would see a nice star at the established strategic directions and goals. That's where we have arrived, and that's where we are tonight. And so you can just imagine that I have pressed a button and the star has appeared in that box. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Executive Lead Sir Janik, who's going to open the way for our consultation team to share with us where the journey is, what it is we've done, what has brought us here, so that you do have a clear understanding of what has happened to compose the goals and the strategic directions that we have been able to pull together for you tonight. So over to you, Executive Lead.
Thank you, Director Williams-Taylor. With us tonight, we have Josh and Katie from Maximum City here with us to present our journey so far, which really has taken place over the course of the last year. A lot of work has gone into it by folks around the board table, folks around our staff team as well, and Maximum City, and of course, really, I think our DDSB community, the many students, families, other external stakeholders, and also internal stakeholders as well that have been engaged as part of that process. Once they run through where we are, where we've landed around the strategic plan, I'll touch on some next steps as well. So Josh and Katie, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Very excited to be here and present the culmination of all this work. The multi-year plan is an important plan, and this is an important moment in the plan. It's when we as a consultant team hand it over to you and it becomes your plan. And the strategic work is done, and now the operationalization, the communication of the plan has to begin and to take place so it can have impact. And my job over the next few minutes is just to take you through the process, to tell you how we got to where we are. And I also want to start by saying this is a distinctly Durham plan. It's a strongly defensible plan, which you will see in the presentation ahead. Yes, of course. So we have a bit of an agenda. As you see, I'll take you through some strategic planning fundamentals through the development process, and then share the new content for the plan. And the purpose really is to prepare the plan for approval at the board meeting in 2 weeks. That is really the purpose of this presentation, is to get it in front of you folks and get it ready to be approved on January 22nd. We are in phase 4. These are the 4 phases that are sort of handed down from the ministry in terms of the development process. And we're right at the culmination where we've synthesized all the work, we've done the development, and we've written the plan. And as I said, we're now handing it over to you for implementation and monitoring. So, what does an MYSP do? It really answers, it asks and answers some very big questions. For example, what drives the DDSB and all of its 136 schools? What are the district's priorities and values? And importantly, how is the district improving? And how does the district monitor and communicate that improvement, which is the back end of the plan? A strategy in a large school district such as this is unique, and your plan should tell anyone who looks at it 3 really important things. Who you are as a learning organization, so that gets at the values and the culture. Where you are going, so that's the direction for ongoing improvement, and how you are going to get there. That's sort of the back end of the plan. And some of the elements of good strategy that I think you will see reflected in the plan that I'm about to present are that a good strategy identifies a concise number of goals. It really makes choices in favor of some priorities over others. You'll see when I present the previous version of the plan that it had 6 priorities. The new one has 3, so there was really a conscious choice to focus on those 3. And it really leverages strengths to address challenges. It's not just about goal setting, it's really about problem solving. I would say good strategy is more about problem solving than goal setting. And this is something we developed, or at least part of something that we developed in our work in other districts. We did an environmental scan of a whole bunch of strategic plans across Ontario and other jurisdictions in North America, and we kind of developed a checklist of what makes a good plan. And when we get to this point in the process, we use this checklist and we apply it to what the district has created. And I'm not going to go through all these, but you can rest assured that we've applied this checklist to the new plan, and it stands up very well. The first one there is very important. It puts students at its center. All the planning and the work that has gone into this, I don't think we ever lost sight of the fact that the student was at the center of this plan and really needed to be the prime beneficiary of it. And here's where we're coming from. This is the current, actually recently expired, I should say, strategic plan. And you can see that it has 6 strategic priorities, so that's just to give you a sense of where we're coming from. And I'll talk a little bit about the development process. There are lots of different things that go into the funnel of creating a strategic plan. So we have the ministry guidelines and directives. There's all the other DDSB plans and data that we looked at and staff helped us sift through at the beginning of the process. Importantly, there was a lot of staff and trustee guidance throughout this process. And the community consultation results, which I'll speak to in a moment, and then our experience as consultants. So you have a very robust engagement record over the last 8 or 9 months. So almost 5,000 participants, over 10,000 comments that we read and analyzed and synthesized to come up with the themes that then informed the recommendations. So again, a very defensible evidence base for informing the plan. These were the themes that came out of the consultation record, and these are not, doesn't mean these are straight one-to-one translations into the new plan, but this is what helped us make the recommendations that then informed the new content. And then throughout the fall and early winter, we really started to dig deeper with some trustee guidance and a smaller staff working group that was instrumental in drafting and revising in iterating the content of the plan. So it was very much a collaborative process, very much an iterative process, and very much about getting it right. Okay? There was a lot of sort of focus on getting the words right, getting the language right, getting the values right, and getting those priorities right. Lots of thank yous and lots of people pulling on the same oar to make this MYSP happen and come to a place where we can present it tonight. And importantly, that those 4,000 plus community members really informed the content of the plan, and they deserve a big thanks for participating as well. So here is the content of the new plan, and just a bit of a caveat before I present it. What you're seeing are the words, the content that will go into the plan, not the design. So please don't focus on the visual. As you heard the director say, that design and communication process is underway and will continue into the new year now that the content has been put into place. So you will see on the screen there that there are 3 strategic priorities: meaningful learning, connected communities, and well-being. And there are also 3 guiding principles. And I'm going to go through each of these quickly and talk about some of the strategic objectives that go with each of them over the next couple of minutes. So meaningful learning, the 3 strategic objectives that go with meaningful learning are: provide high-quality teaching and learning for every student and staff member, center students and match educational experiences to their interests and goals to prepare them for a changing world, recognize and support staff as professionals and collaborators. And then the next strategic priority is connected communities, and the 3 objectives that go with it are: engage students, families, staff, and community members as valued contributors to our growing community, build trust in a shared purpose through listening, communication, and action, foster opportunities to meet, learn from, and inspire each other, And the third strategic priority is well-being. Create safe, caring, and respectful environments where people can thrive. Support the physical and mental health of students and staff. Honor every individual's identity and inherent dignity. And then the three guiding principles that sort of underpin all of the work, so these are the guiding principles that make those strategic priorities possible. The first one is we recognize and uphold distinct Indigenous rights. We affirm and uphold human rights. We care about and strive to know each other. So three strategic priorities, three guiding principles, and just one note that is best sort of represented here. They are all interconnected and all interdependent. So this is not a hierarchy of priorities or a hierarchy of principles. It is an ecosystem, and each one depends on the other to thrive. So you can't have one off on its own separate agenda. It's all part of the same overarching agenda. And in terms of the next steps, I am going to hand this over to Executive Lead Sir Janik to talk to this final slide.
Thanks, Josh. So as we look ahead to the strategic plan coming to the board meeting later this month and to assist with trustee discussion today at standing committee, the chart on the screen there outlines the various roles and responsibilities in line with the governance framework for school boards in Ontario as we think about strategic plans. As we move away from the trustee working group meetings that help set that direction and provide feedback and collaboration with our consultant team, we're at the stage of seeking a decision from the board on adopting a new strategic plan, which will then evolve into the work of staff to help shape a work plan once adopted, and then over to our senior team who would be engaged with designing and implementing a work plan based on the directions of the strategic plan. And after that, that would include status reports to the board on the implementation and impact of the plan. And really this ultimately goes back to the Board of Trustees who would then be tasked with monitoring implementation, the impact, and providing feedback to the senior team as part of a continuous cycle at the end of that process, of really this process. It's a continuous process, but at the end of the chart that you see there. So those really are kind of the next steps in advancing the strategic plan. Once the board decides on what that strategic plan should be, then we're able to go off and do a lot of additional work that would take place. And just on the last slide, as we go from that strategic direction to that work plan that I was mentioning and ensuring accountability through monitoring and reporting, there's going to be many steps that will be taken to prepare for an effective rollout of the strategic plan. So that's the development of a district and community-wide communications plan, rollout plan that's underway that would spread awareness of the new plan, reiterate key messages to community, and really seek to embed the new plan into everything that the DDSB does. So that encompasses many forms of internal and external communication. Those are things like emails, social media, web content, advertising, media outreach, videos, meetings, seminars, engagements internally within staff groups, for example, and of course also printed materials that would be shared through departments and schools. The monitoring plan aspect of it really will seek to outline the relationship between the organizational priorities, creating some clear actions, expected outcomes for the community, developing metrics, schedules, responsibilities, and accountability for review and reporting. And the senior team will be collaborating and determining, based on the strategic plan, what those key initiatives are that will form as part of that work plan to implement what we've presented in front of you today. That work would take place over the next few months and then would be presented to the board as part of our regular planning and reporting. Folks who've been around the board table for a while will be a little bit familiar with those types of reports that come forward, and that would come forward regularly, usually at multiple different times throughout the year, with reporting essentially on what has been done, and then we kind of go again into that continuous cycle. So that's really what some of the next steps look like. I know Josh and Katie are happy to take any questions based on the work that was done. We're happy to take any questions as well, and thank you.
Any questions from trustees? Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. As we move forward to operationalize the plan with a view to implementation, I just wondered if there was any thought that was given specifically to the diverse learning needs of our special needs students. And this was something that was brought forward by our parents. And as I was going through this report yet again, I noticed that the comment from parents, that parents noted that the diverse learning needs were not receiving the support they were promised in the classroom. And so I was just wondering, as we move forward now, will there be some consideration given to possibly some differentiation in terms of implementation around special needs students?
I'm happy to take that first. Absolutely, yes. Through the operational planning process, developing of work plans, and what key initiatives that would come out of the strategic plan, I can tell you absolutely. That would be one major component of it. I don't know, Josh, if you want to speak to more the broad nature of the strategic plan and shaping kind of the work and the overall work of the district, but I can assure you, yes, the special needs it will take place, will be part of that planning and reporting, absolutely.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Thatcher, I was simply going to say that you're right, it came out strongly in the consultation record. And it fell really under meaningful learning and different, we had a multiple pathways category, as you recall in the report. So all of that would be up to the operational planning to make sure it captures what was reflected in the consultation program. But certainly that was something that we heard. And remember, when you see the plan, you're looking at the kind of the tip of the iceberg. The real sort of impact of it, the weight of it, comes from the operational plan, from how different schools own different aspects of the plan. But certainly I just wanted to respond and say, you're right, that was something we heard clearly and we passed it on through the reporting, and it would fall under meaningful learning. Is that, would you agree with that, Katie? Katie's agreeing, thank you.
Student Trustee Hoare.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to our awesome presenters as well as the staff that I know that put in a lot of time and effort into working on this draft. In the future, it would be interesting to include or see like a geographical breakdown as to where the survey responses and the feedback are coming from. Maybe one in the different data tables shown in the plan. This info could assist staff and trustees in determining what areas of the DDSB may lack the most engagement, as well as representation from parents and students alike. As well as this insight could also provide a stronger assurance that all regions are being included and that they see their ideas and beliefs reflected within our board's multi-year strategic plan. Obviously, I came into this process as it was well underway, so I'm just wondering, has this type of information ever been used before when developing themes, as well as could it possibly be used in the future? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Student Trustee Hoare, through you, Madam Chair. It's certainly something we consider, particularly in a district that is kind of spread out, like Durham is, where you're capturing different input from in the consultation process and making sure that there is some thought put into reaching different corners of the district. And we did that in various ways. We had sort of a multimodal engagement program where we had an online survey where anyone could respond to it, and then we actually went where people are in different locations within the district to engage them on the spot. In the survey, and Katie, you can refresh my memory on this, we did not collect geographic information for Durham. And the thinking there was that this was a strategic plan that sits above everything else. And it really was about district-wide planning, but certainly that's something that can be done. We have done it in the past, particularly when you can collect data from different municipalities and then compare priorities throughout. But I think there was a decision made in this process simply to collect it at a district-wide level, but I appreciate the question.
If I may just add on to the end of that, when we were reviewing the consultations to date that took place in the summer, and we really felt as though we wanted to hear more from students, and in particular students at the elementary level. So we organized multiple sessions in every area of the district, actually, in order to hear in classrooms, in schools. One of the images is on the front of the consultation report for Maximum City. We had some sketch artists attend those sessions, and we wanted to hear directly from students, and we wanted to hear from them in different areas of the district. So that is one tactic used, and then again as well through the communication that took place, it was spread quite broadly around the district as well.
Trustee Morgan?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Like Josh said, this is an important plan. It's an important moment. I definitely want to reiterate that. I'm extremely pleased that we've moved to a 5-year plan. Our last plan was a 3-year plan, but it was extended by 2 years. It also became then a 5-year plan. We're on the right track there. I also want to go back to those 3 strategic priorities: meaningful learning, connected communities, and well-being, all extremely important. There was much discussion around our guiding principles, but I'm extremely pleased that we've settled on those 3: recognizing and upholding distinct Indigenous rights, affirming and upholding human rights, and we care about and strive to know each other. That's the building community that we need to work on, and we will continue to work on building community. I also want to commend the 2 of you for the work that you have done, and we've certainly enjoyed working with you over the past few months. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up is the Student Census 2023, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Margaret Lazarus.
Thank you. The report, the Student Census, can be found on pages 55 to 97 of your agenda package. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to share with the trustees the result of the Student Census conducted in the spring of 2023. Knowing who our students are allows the Durham District School Board to make informed and meaningful decisions that support their achievement and well-being. The presentation this evening will give an overview of the census data, as well as highlighting our response to the first census and our proposed responses to this 2023 census. So please join me in welcoming Chris Conley, our Research and Strategic Analytic Manager, and Sean McCormack, Anti-Oppression System Lead.
The DDSB is committed to ensuring success for all students. The Durham region is growing, and each and every day we welcome students and families with diverse identities, experiences, and backgrounds to our school and our classroom communities. It is important that we know who our students are in order to uphold Indigenous and human rights and support achievement and well-being for all students. The data from the Student Census supports these goals. It helps us to better understand student populations and school communities, identify potential barriers for student success, engagement, and well-being, and address those barriers and improve experiences and outcomes for all students. When we know who our students are and our families are, we can better serve them to create conditions where all students can be successful and thrive. This is consistent with the principles, rights, and responsibilities under the Human Rights Code. The United Nations Declaration of Rights and Indigenous Peoples, as I mentioned, the Human Rights Code, Anti-Racism Act, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, Education Act, Ministry of Education Directives, DDSB policies and procedures. Taken together, These outlines our legal duties and responsibilities for why conduct of a student census and how we collect and report data and what we do with the data. As an employer and service provider, the DDSB recognizes its duty-bearer responsibilities under the Human Rights Code and related legislation. We have specific responsibilities to promote and protect human rights, inform our community members about their rights and responsibilities, identify and address discriminatory barriers, respond to accommodation requests, and ensure that human rights principles are integrated into our policies, practices, and decision-making processes. We also have a responsibility to learn how human rights apply to each of our jobs and to correct discrimination when it occurs. As a system, we have the duty to honor rights of our students by using our policies, procedures, and any data we collected to create and maintain welcoming, accessible, inclusive, and equitable learning environments, classrooms, schools, and displays that reflect diverse identities, prevent and address barriers that are discriminatory and/or create inequities. It is important to understand who we serve to better serve them in the most meaningful way. Through the data collected in both the census and other sources, we recognize that our students and their families have many intersecting layers of their identities, some aspects which we can see and others which we cannot. The student census provides us with an opportunity to better understand who our students are and their families are to best meet the needs of all.
The summaries that have been prepared for you in appendices A, B, and C are question-by-question summaries of what is being shared with us by parents and guardians of students in kindergarten to grade 6 and students in grades 7 to 12. While there are some fluctuations, the representation is generally consistent with what was shared on our first census. In this second administration of the student census, we had an overall response rate of 23%, with a larger engagement of parent and guardian completions in kindergarten to grade 6 than students in grades 7 to 12. When compared with our first administration of the student census, there was a decline in response rate of 14 percentage points. Where we saw the biggest decrease in participation was with our students from grades 7 to 12. This second administration actually had a consistent participation from parents with slightly more engagement. 100 more parents and guardians participated this time over last time. But we saw significantly fewer secondary students participate. We had 7,000 participate this time and had 14,500 participate last time. Looking at the municipal participation, we had less participation in the north, whereas in the first administration of the census, we had between 31 to 40% participation rate across all municipalities. Although we didn't have as high a response rate as we had hoped, we do have sufficient data at the board level to support planning and resource development. As we reflect on this past administration, we're considering what worked well and what could be improved in these 4 areas. How we raise awareness through our communication and promotion, how we support accessibility through our survey formats with translations, online and paper versions, and reflecting on who is and who is not engaging. Considering when it is administered and how it fits in with the timeline of other data collections, as well as considering our relationships with our staff, students, and families. To this last point, we have invited people to voluntarily share information about themselves. Each time we invite people to complete a survey, we are asking them to trust us with what they share, not just in how we ask the questions or our privacy and security processes, but with how we will use the information we collect. And this is our opportunity to build trust through the work we do with this information and through the student and family voices where we hear whether we are having an impact. To those that participated in the census, we thank you for sharing and trusting us. And to those that chose not to participate, we hope that you will see the value in the work that we do with the information as we support students and families, and we hope that you will consider participating next time.
So looking back, we've begun including analysis of outcomes using our census data in some regular reports. For example, the last 2 years, the Positive School Climate Report that has been shared in the spring has included analysis of suspension and summaries of school climate surveys by student identities. We intend to include these summaries in our regular reports to be timely with the discussion and decision-making, rather than waiting for a special report at the end of the year when planning has been concluded. Recognizing that some groups are achieving at disproportionate levels, the DDSB has trained educators and support staff to be able to identify, address, and disrupt structures and practices that have been barriers to achievement for some students. During the past several years, the DDSB staff has done the following. So a committee was established to address disproportionate suspension and discipline rates that have begun to align suspension procedures with our human rights procedures. Staff implemented graduation coaches for Black student programs to work with students experiencing lower graduation rates. We have worked alongside Visible Every Day to support and establish several programming opportunities for students that identify as part of the 2S LGBTQIA+, as well as staff to support them by way of conferences, flag-raising ceremonies, and resources and supports for educators. Resources highlighting and prioritizing the Indigenous identity and other identities and lived experiences of students were strategically purchased so that staff and students could build their knowledge and capacity around anti-oppression and enhance their teaching and learning experience for all. In addition, all DDSB schools are participating in School-Based Inquiry project to identify and address barriers to achievement specific to schools, which is impacting our students and staff at the point of teaching and learning. Looking forward, we will continue to consult members of racialized communities experiencing disproportionate and lower achievement levels, provide resource and support to improve student achievement levels, and ongoing training for staff to identify and prevent and address disparities and disproportionately among students, provide additional learning and supports for specific interventions for students in risk. This will be done by addressing the needs of stakeholders, staff, students, parents, guardians, and communities members to support the greater access to improved achievement and a better sense of belonging.
As staff, today we affirm our belief in the urgency of the now, and in the idea that success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts, and we will continue our commitment to ensuring a success for all students by being responsive to our student census data and by upholding Indigenous and human rights to support achievement and well-being for all students. This ends our presentation, and we'd be pleased to take questions at this time.
Are there any questions from trustees? Trustee Thatcher?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. In my mind, I see a difference between a survey and a census. And so the participation rate of 23% of 80,000 students across the district would certainly be very disappointing to me. And so that would have been my first question for you, but having heard your presentation, obviously you have put a lot of thought into how we can improve that percentage going forward, so I appreciate that. I was wondering, it's interesting to get this information, but then we always ask ourselves, what can we do with the data that we have? That was interesting that we saw of the total response, the 23%, 3% identified as Indigenous and 8% identified as Muslim. I'm just wondering, how do we take that information and use that in terms of our programming, for one example? So how do we use that information going forward?
Take that, Sean?
Yep.
In terms of programming, I think it's important to recognize and understand who our students are. Irrelevant of their percentage, we know that students who identify as Indigenous exist in our system and that are experiencing some tensions. I think those numbers do reflect a percentage point. However, I think it's more so understanding the difference of identities that are present in the Durham region to ensure that there's representation across the system by way of the curriculum. So just reflecting back to the literacy presentation, when we talk about anti-oppressive practices, knowing who our students are is the first step in terms of understanding and presenting information that is identity affirming for all.
In addition, we're engaging with all of our communities that identify our diverse communities to ensure that we're programming for all students. Right now, we're meeting with our Muslim students to create strategies to combat Islamophobia. We're also meeting with our Visible Every Day. So we're trying to make sure that we catch all of our identities to make sure that we are meeting the needs. So for me, it's not the percentage necessarily, but that we have to, whether it's 1% or 2% or 20%, we still have to make sure that we're programming for all identities in our board.
Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you for that very fulsome report. I think there's a lot of really interesting information in there. Like Trustee Thatcher, I hope that the response rate will be higher for next time. There is one data point on this that I'm not sold on, and that's the 15% of people who said they have no religion. And I would be really curious to know how many of those 15% celebrate holidays like Christmas and Easter.
Yeah, I think it's curious to know. I think what we've learned about our current society is that we've been so exposed to a variety of different cultures that we have a variety of families that do celebrate traditional holidays, even though they don't necessarily identify with the religious aspect of those holidays. So challenging to understand who may celebrate Christmas and Easter but not identify as Christian. But yeah, I think there's a lot of intersecting pieces of identity that we can't necessarily capture through the census, but it's something for us to think about as we always focus on the intersectionality of identity.
Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This has been voiced before, but I do feel as though I need to express my disappointment in the response rates. So I'm looking at 18-19 to now, and I'm looking particularly at grades 7 to 12. So we're looking at teenage years here. So 5 years ago, we had nearly half of all students in that age bracket participating. This year, we're down to 20%, 1 in 5. And I know that you also are alarmed by that. What steps can we take? These teenagers have voices. How can we make sure that we hear those concerns?
There's no single answer to the response rate where it is. I would note that we're not the only board that experienced a decline in response rate. The Toronto District School Board and a few others have shared some of their information as well, noting a noticeable decline. That said, there are things that we consider within those 4 areas that I had mentioned previously. So considering when we are administering asking people and inviting them to share the information, how many other surveys have we administered? We did administer the school climate survey last year in addition to the student census, both very large data collections. we do have to keep in mind that it is voluntary. So we can't mandate a participation rate. We can encourage, and which is where my focus on trust and what is our relationship and what are the concerns people have around sharing and understanding that. And so that comes with additional inquiry.
Any further questions? I see Trustee Van Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. And I was just, if I may, I was actually just going to share one of my responses related to Trustee Cunningham's question. And I was one of the people who put no religion as my question, as my answer to the religion question, just as someone who does, celebrate Easter and Christmas, but in a way that isn't necessarily recognizing religion, but just a celebration that my family has done and always done and kind of just does now. So just to provide some perspective there.
Trustee Piniella.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, thank you for the presentation, for this report, for the work that's done. I know it's very difficult, especially in present and just the last few years, to collect data, because I think people are definitely feeling that burnout and being sort of over canvassed for information. But reading it and hearing what my fellow trustees are saying about response rates, I wonder if we consider incentivizing the completion of these census surveys, not necessarily in the sense of when someone completes them, they get something, because that might raise questions around the confidentiality piece. But I do recall being in class in high school and having my teacher take a couple minutes to have us all, fill in, at that point it was paper, a survey. Couldn't tell you what for, but we all filled it in. And whether you chose to fill it in or not, nobody would ever know, but we were all given the same amount of time. And then at the end of that, there was a little perk. And so I wonder if that would be impactful. Yes, it's relatively small in scale, but giving people the time to do it might be more of the challenge, because as soon as people leave a school, as soon as students leave a school, they're probably not checking. They're probably not thinking, oh, I should really do the census, especially those teen students, unless they're very passionate or have something that they really, really want to be put on the record or recorded somewhere. And so I think maybe it would be worthwhile if we considered a strategy board-wide that would be age appropriate, right? High school is going to look a little different than elementary, and that's okay, especially for parents. Or maybe even encourage, parents, if they come to an info night with you folks, to hear about what the census is for, and take some time on a Chromebook or an iPad or something to fill the census out on behalf of their children. Like, I think how we meet people and communicate what the purpose is, and also incentivize in smaller ways and build up perhaps, might help with those response rates. So just wanted to put that out as a potential suggestion, and thank you again.
Can't really speak to incentivizing, but I know that one thing we've talked about is setting aside a day and a time when everyone is not required, but a day and a time to do the census. And as the trustee just stated, if students decide to fill it out, they can, and if they don't, we're not going to argue about that. But if we set aside a time and a day, and we know board-wide that this is what we're doing, it's certainly something that we are talking about doing. The incentive is another discussion, but certainly a day and a time when everyone's involved in the census I think would be helpful.
Any additional questions from trustees? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Next on the agenda is the school year calendar planning 2024-2025, and I will turn it over to Associate Directors Jim Markowski and David Wright.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Oldfield, I have Chris Conley as well joining me, the Manager of Research and Strategic Analytics, for the report this evening that begins on page 98 of your package. The purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with information about the planning and consultation process to develop the 2024-2025 school year calendars. Prior to the approval of last year's school calendars, the Board of Trustees requested that staff explore further possibilities to the removing of potential barriers. There were suggestions expressed about the placement of professional development days on select days of significance, and as a result, staff have expanded the work that is being done when preparing proposed school year calendars. The following tasks were undertaken with an emphasis on furthering our reach to elicit voice and in the interest of mitigating barriers. We've reviewed the days of religious significance for DDSB community members. We've reviewed the district's current practices to support creed-based days of significance, which falls actually within our human rights policies and related procedures. We've reviewed the purpose and intent of professional development days. We've reviewed the legislative and contractual agreements for school year calendars that must be met. And we've also reviewed our current community engagement and consultation process for the school year calendar. In addition, we've conducted a preliminary jurisdictional scan of other boards' school year calendar consultation and development processes and assessed additional operational considerations and impacts. We recognize that the current structure and school year calendars may pose and or perpetuate barriers for students, families, and staff based on creed and religion. And the DDSB has responsibilities under the Human Rights Code to identify, prevent, and address potential discriminatory barriers and to meet its legal duty to accommodate Human Rights Code-related needs, which includes needs based on the protected grounds of creed, religion, and ancestry. Additionally, the DDSB must also meet requirements under the Education Act and the related regulations, for example, Regulation 304, which is specific to the school year calendar. Going forward, and in order to enhance existing processes, staff will operationalize the following 2 items. There will be an expansion of the community consultation process, which is outlined within the report, and there will be the development of a dates of significance reference tool to help support the planning across all what I would say stakeholders within the system, in particular at the school level, to ensure that we're being responsive to the needs of students and families. We believe that these key enhancements will assist us in better servicing DDSB school communities. There are further details that are included within the report for your reference, and we would be happy to take any questions that you may have at this time. This is being shared with you for information prior to us beginning the school year 24-25 consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from trustees? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the OPSPA report, and I have received a message from Trustee Edwards, who doesn't have her voice this evening, that there is no OPSPA report, but just a reminder that the PES, the Public Education Symposium, is coming up January 24th and 25th. And that brings us to the end of the agenda. And so thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.